Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 21 of my Pyanodons playthrough. In this episode, we continue to improve all of our ore processing setups. Enjoy! So the previous setup with a full belt of quartz ore would produce 25 glass using 104 gasoline, whereas the new one produces 45 glass and only uses 50 gasoline, so it is substantially better. It's actually really small, it only needs 3 jaw crushers. And I guess this is our opportunity to move this setup back over there where I wanted it to be to begin with. We need to clear these belts out because I don't want to fill up my inventory with all that junk. We're going to need glass eventually, but how about we just open the floodgates on this machine, and that will cause everything to move. We should be mostly good here, so put in the fuel, and the belt goes down. Put in the quartz, and it's interesting that that's an achievement, but I'll take it. Now that we have splitters, we could just have combined belts of byproducts and the things that we want. So this stone will just go to this belt right here and be sent to where it needs to. Meanwhile, it's building up a buffer, so seems good. We have 3 other ores we can make more efficient. Let's do lead. And here's our recipe, that it's actually a 2-to-1 ratio for lead, so it's pretty easy to make. So we have 1 belt going in, it gets turned into the grade 1, and we get our 7.5 plates. Compare this to before. We had the same half belt going in, but we only got 1.25. This is our first use of the Mark II fluid mining drill, and I don't think I talked about this one very much. It's a very expensive building, like 500 plates, and the previous drill does go into it. The mining speed is double, and the energy consumption is a little bit more than doubled. So it is slightly less efficient to use it, but I'm willing to pay that cost. And we might as well calculate for the drills. And we'll need 15 of them, and it's so much nicer not having to deal with fuel and ash anymore. I'm going to just keep saying that because it keeps being true. Let's see, we do want to try to give this thing a chance to empty out. So just unhooking the acetylene ought to do it. And placing these miners down is pretty straightforward. Compared to what we were doing before, we just mash a bunch of them in here. Super easy. Okay, let's see it all work. In goes the acetylene, and mining is occurring. We'll have to check our power network, but certainly electric mining drills is starting to take over, and we definitely want to have priority here. Don't need to have 10 machines, but 10 looks a lot better than 9, so we're going with 10. There's no byproducts with this one. It just makes the sorted lead ore. And because we only need to have 3 of them a second, might as well do a side switch. And in fact, we should do it on the other side, because even though we are leaving the ash era, there is still an ash era thing we can do. And that is use both sides of the belt. The near side for the input and the far side for the output. Just makes it a little cleaner. So in goes the fuel, then in goes our processed lead, and we don't need to have any kind of filter. And it makes them 10 at a time. And then we'll have the underground belt trick in here to keep the plates moving. And not that we need very much of it right now, but we've got half a belt of lead plates. Although the miners are just as efficient with the ore and the mining fluid, by processing our lead, we're getting more plates per unit of ore, which means less acetylene is being used for mining. And it's definitely going. We might need to upgrade this setup at some point. But we'll wait until it's clearly falling behind before we do anything about it. I don't want to invent a problem that doesn't yet exist. Well, the factory is keeping up with the power demand just fine. However, we are finding ourselves being overloaded on the soot, so it's time for more. And this setup really wasn't built with putting more solid separators here in mind, but I guess we're gonna have to find a way to make it work. And I suppose we should double up. Then we need to pipe this into the back of the other one. Super messy, but I really don't want to move this stuff around right now. And that is a lot of soot processing, and just a lot of ore in general. That's quite substantial, but it's looking good. It's going through the backup. I guess I got ahead of myself on this nickel processing, that we don't actually need it yet. We will need it soon, but not quite yet. So I would rather focus on things that we can immediately upgrade, which in this case will be tin. Right now we're highly limited on steam, but 2.5 tin plate really isn't that much, especially considering previously we were only at 1.5, and that is enough for our circuits, but I would like to upgrade it a bit. This means we're going to need to have 2 full-size power plants supplying steam to be able to mine at that rate. Right now we only have the 1, but that's okay. We'll be able to upgrade it later if we need to. Okay, we've got all the buildings we need, so let's upgrade tin. So first we have to pull all these miners out. Might be easiest just to have a bunch of inserters here to clear out the ores, clear out the plates. Okay, let's hook everything up and see it mine. That's a lot of miners, but it's working. And we need to do the processing. And we want to move it away from the factory rather than towards it. And especially this area right here is probably going to be used for zinc processing, so we really want it to go out in this direction. The first step goes through an automated screener to get grade 1 and grade 2, and that is very similar to copper here, but because we have new technology, we should probably design a new one. It is much simpler when we have access to splitters. Let's do this vertically. This will be slightly too many machines, but it will be nice and square. So that's one of them, but we actually need to have 2, and everything can overlap. We're actually having a problem here, that because we're not consuming stone, we're not making any iron, and the iron is going into concrete, which is what is consuming the stone. A good dump for stone is saline water, and you can see it's a pretty substantial build. 30 washing plants here. I kind of want to use a much larger tank to hold this, because we need to have a lot of room and buffer. Let's unhook this for a second. Now we need our saline buffer tank. Basically, we just want to empty this, and we'll have an underflow valve in here just to get this to 10%, and we don't need that anymore. Okay, and then we just need a whole bunch of washers. But it just goes on the end, and it's going to be pretty big, and it doesn't really matter where it goes. It's just going to be a snake of belt here. So that's 10 of them, 20, and 30, my goodness. I say snake, but I'm still thinking in pre-splitter days that there's going to be no snake here. It's just going to be splitters and normal belts. I can't get it out of my head. It's been too long. I guess we're producing too much stone for our own good now. This is a good place to use it up. It's not an efficient way of making saline, but saline is kind of expensive to make in general. So this is plenty acceptable. Okay, that should be most of it. Let's send up the belt, and this is the terminus of all of our factory stone. So by continuing it, this will give the lowest priority to the saline machines. And let's pipe the water in. Does it look good? Seemingly. And there we are, making saline water. It's very slow. But in doing so, we're starting to clear out our stone backup, and production will resume. Okay, we've got some saline water in the pipes, so we'll hook it in, and down it goes. Now the level is going up. We'll have to see how it works. We might actually have to put a sinkhole in there just to get rid of the water. Another thing we could potentially do is electrolyze it away and get the sodium hydroxide, but that would be a really expensive way of getting rid of it. It is just salt water after all. So our tin setup is going to separate them into both grade 1 and grade 2, but there's not enough of it where we have to worry about throughput. So we'll just put a splitter in there to grab everything. We also need to get the ore onto these belts. So there we go. If we've done this correctly, it'll have priority, and seems like it. Okay, let's see how it works. In it goes, and achievement unlocked. They should be balanced on the left and right sides of the belt because the machines on the right are outputting to the right side of this belt and the left side of that belt. So when they get here, it will be balanced. Okay, we've got our 12 jaw crushers now. The goal of these is to take the grade 2 tin and turn it into grade 1 and some stone, which comes on the outside. We already have the grade 1 tin on this belt, so any that we do gets pushed to this belt with the stone, and then at the end they get sorted between stone and tin. Yeah, seemingly works. There's not much to see. Now we need the furnace stack. And because the throughput is low here, we can use both sides of the belt. And in goes the tin. It's still a large recipe, so it takes a lot to get going. But there we go. Processing away. And we might as well put our extra plates on that belt. So when they get to the end, like before, we want them to keep going, and we might as well combine the sides and put the stone and the tin on the same belt. That's what all this is kind of waiting for. To make this work, since this is a byproduct, we probably want to have the input on that side, just to make sure it's flowing nice and smoothly, and now it very much seems to. So this will pop in and drop stone on the other side. So how's this all working? Well, it looks like we are still turning the stone into saline, but that's actually because steel is falling behind. Iron is fine. And the saline tank is getting a little full. And energy usage is all right for what it is. Because of all these electric mining drills, they're certainly going to be at the top now. So we've taken care of those resources, and there's a little more we can do here. We can unlock Crusher 2, or the secondary crusher. Split, crush, and prepare sublevels of crushing minerals. And that does give us a recipe that essentially can turn one limestone into one soil. But I don't know how valuable this is because both of those resources you can produce on demand. So, shrug, but you can do it. And from here, we can do titanium processing, which is a upgrade in complexity compared to the previous ones. So first, we sort titanium ore into grade 1 and grade 2 with an automated screener. Any grade 2 can be crushed in a jar crusher to grade 1, and then all of that grade 1 goes through an automated screener to get grade 3 and rejects. The rejects can be crushed in the secondary crusher to make gravel and a % of titanium 3. And so now besides just stone, we're going to be producing gravel as junk as well. And then any grade 3 you have can be smelted into plates. And the other thing that it unlocks is stage 1 of raw coal. So finally, we're at the point where we can process raw coal. So if we put 3 raw coal through a secondary crusher, it will turn 2 of them into regular coal, and 1 of them is crushed coal. And also a little bit of dust. And interestingly, the crushed coal is a 6 megajoule fuel item, so it's actually even better than coke. This is kind of a strange recipe in the position in the tech tree. It's not entirely clear what the value is of it, but we'll take a look at it after we do titanium. And every time we choose to research stuff, it's always a good opportunity to look at the factory and make sure that it's running and nothing is particularly broken. And it seems pretty good. We're definitely super short on iron right now. We've got titanium done, and since this is a little more complicated than the other ones, let's do a hail mod together. So we'll figure out the numbers in a bit, but we have grade 3 and it comes from 2 places. We'll just add both of them and do matrix solver. And then the grade 1, it also comes from 2 places, and the matrix solver helps us here as well. And I actually want to switch it to input so we can set it to 15 a second and see if that's reasonable. Probably. We actually need to mine this ore. And here we go. It's going to require 30 miners, and is that reasonable? Probably. We're not going to need a whole lot of titanium in the beginning. Well, one other thing to consider is that our titanium mine here is really tiny, and we really don't want to build a setup in this area processing titanium. So get rid of that flashing. The actual titanium processing will probably be somewhere else. And looking at all our choices, we've got a couple patches, but this one seems the most out of the way. It's also on the smaller end. I usually like to go with small patches first just to clear them out. I don't know, we're at the point now where we can afford both the electricity and the building cost to start making things a little larger. So how about we make something like this? As big as it is, it's still only going to make 5.75 a second. Alright, we've got all the buildings we need, but we should probably pull this out first, because I think I want to build a mine here and then send the ore out to over here, because it really doesn't make much sense to do the processing near the center of our factory when the majority of it is going to happen out here next to this patch. So I think to drain this, we should just have a single belt just kind of going out there. We are delivering the titanium plates from this point, and we may want to change that with that caravan. So we'll see what it all looks like after we're making the plates at our new location. We did have a pretty large buffer of resources here just to keep the mine going. Okay, I do want to mine this out as quickly as possible just so this coal will then be available, because it's not easy to mine both patches at the same time. It was a little easier this time because we had power poles for the coal mine, so not as much to set up here. Now we need to run a very long belt. This is relatively temporary, so it'll be okay if it runs over things that it shouldn't. And we have a bit of a bus building here, so let's reuse the spot. And we're at the point now where making these mining stacks is pretty straightforward. It is so much easier when there's no coal and ash to deal with. And I guess we'll go up, since that's where the other ore is going to come from. This is such a huge mine. But there's the miners we do have, and we can throw the rest of them in later when that other mine runs dry. We are not going to need this production for now. This is more building for the future. And power use is pretty high. That despite all of our power plants, we are pretty much maxing out. But of course, 100 megawatts is going just to the miners. If you take them out, then the power draw of everything looks a lot more balanced. That is to be expected with putting all those miners in, but it does mean that we basically need even more power. And that's fine. I really don't mind building more power plants because it has the effect of condensing, as crazy as this is, all of your power generation into one spot, and thus all of your ash processing into one spot. So I think it's a lot better to be processing ash like this, very local to where it's being made, rather than like this where you have ash processors all around your factory just trying to keep up. Gasoline has been building up a little bit, but we are kind of at the point now where basically all of our fluids for fuel are about to run out, so we're going to need more. And we have options, but for now let's switch over to gasoline again. Although I think I did say that I wanted this to be completely cleared out so we can just move it. We actually have an extra tailings pond here, so let's just position it now and get it moved. I really don't like the idea of putting it so close to those other things. So in it goes, pumping it down the best it can, and in goes the gasoline. Close enough. Oh yeah, I definitely saw power flicker there for a second. Absolutely, we need to do something about power. Kind of want to straighten these pipes out a little bit. I think we were doing that because the tailings pond was in the way. We do have to be careful with power fluctuations, because now that we have electric miners, that power output will decrease when the factory goes below 100% power, because then the miners will slow down. So when you have electric miners, it's real important that power stays consistent. Okay. Of course, right when we get there, the extent is not long enough, but I kind of don't want to run these things because it's actually a lot of power right here. So until we upgrade our power output, I kind of want to keep it limited to just this. So, oops, but oh well. Okay, this is our first, essentially, 3-step process. There's technically 4 machines in there, but the way I look at it is the first step of processing makes stone, and then the second step makes gravel. And this is the first time that we'll have gravel from ore processing to deal with. And you'll see this with pretty much all the other ores, that as you get better processing, they'll start creating gravel as well. So that's why I kind of think of this as 2-step, even though we have to process it 4 different ways. And the order is important. Just want to think about the logic and what's currently being processed. So the first step is the 18 automated screeners. And we are kind of at the point where we need to have a radar in here, but we've already done something very similar to this. So we can just use this here and change the recipe. So let's rotate it to the side so it matches up and get it in there. In go the screeners. And we need to switch the recipe to the first titanium. That was power. Better. So this first step is going to take regular titanium ore and sort it between grade 1 and grade 2. Awesome, working good. Now the second step is going to crush down specifically the grade 2. And we've also done something similar to this. The number of machines is slightly different, but the concept is basically the same. It's just this. This is the nice thing about building very clean and square and repeatable type builds, because then later when you need that for something else, even though Pi might have a bajillion recipes for every type of ore, the actual way that you handle things is kind of similar. Once you've figured out one process, you kind of just apply it to everything else. And I mean, that's not totally unlike vanilla Factorio. For example, if you have a smelting stack that is making iron, that same design can make copper as well. Pi and other complicated mods just add a bunch of steps basically, but the concept is the same. So we gotta switch these to the titanium. Okay, let's test this out. This is going to take any of the grade 2 we have and then crunch it down into stone and grade 1. So the only thing that will come out of this will be grade 1. And then when it gets to here, it hits this stone belt that then is going to move off to the side, and they're going to be separate belts. You don't have to, but it is good practice to take the byproducts off of the main belt with the ores because you might run into throughput limitations. So it's just kind of good to do it that way. But in it goes, getting crunched down. So that's good. Next, we need to take all of that grade 1 and throw it through a second round of automated screening. This time with a lot less buildings. And it looks like we're leaving 2 spaces between each build, so we'll do that here as well. This is ending up being longer than I was expecting. I didn't want it to bump up potentially against stuff from the tar processing, but oh well. I didn't follow my own rule of always build away from the center of the factory. And this is kind of why. Stuff like this ends up happening. If I had robots, I would absolutely move the whole build for that reason. But we don't, and I'm not going to spend another 20 minutes or whatever it took to rebuild all that by hand. Like, it is there to stay now. I'm sorry. And I guess we never actually filled this in. There we go. It is kind of frustrating because I was setting up a bus right here. It's hard to imagine this whole part of the factory being filled up by stuff, but eventually it might be. But again, oh well. Actually, with Factorio in general, and especially complex mods like Pi, and also just as a side note of making videos for YouTube, you need to be able to accept imperfection. So do they say that perfection is the enemy of good? That very much applies here. Like, I could rebuild this thing somewhere else and even potentially re-record it and pretend like it never happened. I feel like that's kind of disingenuous because it makes me look like I'm perfect and I never make any mistakes. But also it just takes a lot of time and I don't feel like it. Like, it's fine where it is. If belts have to go around this build, then they're going around this build. We've been super short on resources for a while here. It took quite a bit to build those 60 miners, but the plan called for it, so the build got it. Okay, let's change this to the new recipe. So what's going to happen here is the grade 1 will go in and get sorted between grade 3 and rejects. So something like that. We'll push the stone off to the side, and then in goes the grade 1. And achievement unlocked. Looks like these are facing the wrong way. But out comes grade 3 and the rejects. Looking good, and now the final step uses the new machine, the secondary crusher. And here's what the secondary crusher looks like. Same form factor as the other ones. This is a common building size in Pi, so I like building these setups where they're all interchangeable. You just need to change the machines out, and otherwise you get these nice squares. But because we only need 4 of them, we don't necessarily need to do anything crazy. Let's just do a single line of them to make this build as narrow as possible and minimize the chance it gets in the way of something. One thing I didn't do was calculate the inserters for these different machines. That's fine. That's fine. These definitely have too many. Doesn't matter too much, but why use more inserters than you need? So we need to put another splitter here. And I don't like that flickering. Yeah, that's pretty sad. Let's put a splitter here, pull off to the right for the rejects, and we can cut it out, put it in its right spot, and it looks really funny it being like this, but because we have this splitter with the no item on there, they won't actually go through. And right now I kind of don't want to go up. To the right will go the gravel because I'm thinking I want to come back down like this just to minimize the width of the build. So up goes the stone, and then the gravel will come in. So let's see it work. It's going to take in the rejects, and then I guess crush them down in a more fine way to give us grade 3 and gravel. And it's a pretty cool building. It is quite noisy though. And the 4 gas furnaces will absolutely work here. Another thing I thought of is we could actually switch over to making landfill in this build, and it would reuse almost all of this setup instead of sending the extra stone to make saline water. So I kind of want to do that. This might block off the factory for a bit, but let's do that. But we're looking at a total of 4 furnaces, and we actually only need to have 1 inserter per furnace on the input, and the output we need 2. That feels weird to have more inserters on the output than the input, just because the way that it was processed, that the grade 3 is a very compact form of the ore, and it actually doubles in size after it's been smelted. And something that just occurred to me is logistically, instead of smelting the plates here, you could actually belt the titanium around the factory and then smelt it on demand where it's needed. And this would be a denser way of doing that rather than just using plates. It's probably a terrible idea, so don't do it, but I don't know. It just came to mind. And we do need to actually get these plates over here. They're actually traveling a really long way, and they're being used in incredibly tiny quantities. So although in the future we might want to belt this somewhere, for now it seems perfectly fine to just use a caravan instead and save ourselves that big belt. I updated alien life, and whenever you do that, any of the turds automatically get updated as well inside your menu. Okay, let's see this whole thing work. And there it goes. It's pretty fast now. It's almost a full half belt, which is pretty good. And of course this is full, so no inserting occurs. We've got a couple tasks in front of us, and I'm kind of worried that I'm gonna forget them all. I try to stay focused on individual tasks, so I don't normally need something like a task list to keep me on track, so hopefully I just remember them all. But to finish this up, we do need to deliver the stone and now the gravel. And this is the first time we're going to be delivering gravel to be turned into concrete. And I don't really want to go through the center of the factory, especially considering that I have the feeling this stone belt is going to be highly filled with resources, because if this ever starts running in a large amount, right now it's running quite slowly, that this whole belt's going to be completely full. And then this other belt is basically the return belt. And the place where the belts combine and go from byproducts towards where they're consumed is right here. So we need to go towards this part of the factory to get things sorted. And it's actually kind of interesting that if we dump a bunch of resources in here, we might actually max this belt out, which happens. Eventually our factory is going to be producing more than 1 belt of stone. So when we do that, now it is all going to be sorted. And normally this belt won't have a whole bunch of stuff on it. It's just clogged up right now, so it does. It wasn't a very long journey, but it comes to here and then goes up, and then all of the belts are next to each other. So now that we're here, there is something to consider. That the output of gravel from our slaked lime was too slow to be included on this caravan's stop, but this has been going so slow that I don't think this caravan's ever actually run. So we can just take the gravel from this process and stick it onto the belt with this other gravel, and they'll both go to where they need to. So sorry caravan, but we don't need you anymore. And when we pick him up, whoops, that we now have a caravan full of 10 stacks of gravel inside of our pocket. So we'll just pick that up. And it's kind of funny that this gap in the belt is still there from last time, so it was easy to implement. Okay, now that that belt is running, it has cleared out, and it is backed up here, but that makes sense. It's actually clogged on the thing we want, not the byproducts. So everything is pretty good now. So we don't need this outpost anymore since we're not delivering anything there. We could leave it, but I try to remove unnecessary buildings to make it extra clear that something isn't being used, because if I leave that outpost there, I will assume that a caravan is supposed to go there, and that's why the outpost is there. So I'd rather not run into that problem. And then our gravel just hops into there and gets used up. There wasn't much to process, so there it is. So that should take care of our titanium setup. So let's handle all of the random things I was thinking about. Well, right here we are going to make some landfill, both as a dump and also as a way of just consuming resources, because we do want to have a little bit of it. It's of course going to be super easy, so we didn't really need to do this. But looking at the numbers, it's super limited on inserter throughput, and it's basically this. But luckily we have basically everything we need right here. And wow, our iron is actually catching up now. So in the time that it took to make that titanium build, our factory was able to recover from all of those resources, like many thousands of plates that went into that. That is certainly the advantage of building to scale. And yeah, seems pretty good. So when we put in the stone, it's going to instantly run and then wait on the inserters again. And that is what landfill looks like. It's very quick. And at the end of this, if stone goes into landfill, it's not needed. It will then be pushed into the crushers to go into concrete. And if it makes it past the crushers, it will then go into saline water. So we have a few places for stone to go now, because we're producing more and more of it. I believe we needed a radar out here. Just barely, but we did. There we go. I believe another thing I wanted to do was to get rid of that lead and titanium belt, and the belt for lead is highly integrated into our circuit setup. Of course, we could remove it, but also it's not coming from very far. It's just right here. But beyond this point, it has to get pulled off on its own belt and then go down here, through there, through there, through there, get combined with titanium, then down there, down there, down there, to finally go here. And it only runs some of the time whenever we need these resources here. So I guess we need to put a light in there, but it barely needs to go. So this is a great place to use a caravan. Before we even start putting resources in there, I kind of want to clear my inventory out because we're going to have a whole bunch of junk. This will show you how much junk belts hold, even if it's only on one side. Any takers and placing bets down on how many plates we're going to pick up by the end of this? I'm going to go with 3,000. And that's 3,000 of the lead plates. There's probably more with the titanium. This is like that game as a kid where they had a jar full of candies or other small objects and you had to guess how many were in the jar, like jelly beans or something like that. And of course the smart kids would like math it out, and the rest of us just kind of counted and guessed. I feel like this is a Factorio version of that game. It is very satisfying removing this belt, even though we put it in there not that long ago. It felt bad. So I'm glad it's going away. And here we are. I will leave it with 1 square. So we picked up 2.7k of lead plates. So I was actually surprisingly close. I guess whether you're impressed or not, well, one comes down if you care about something so silly as that. But also, if you believe me that I didn't use the factory search mod to actually find the answer before we started picking belts up. Let's just fill it up with 5 inserters and let them go. Do we let it fill it up all the way? Probably, since this is a production building. It's more the buildings that are the receivers of resources that you may not want to fill up, but because multiple caravans may come here later, it makes sense to want to fill it up all the way. It's also much less likely that this will be removed in the future because it's integral to the setup now, whereas the consuming buildings kind of change from time to time. And let's just try to have it set up the way that it was here. And there we go. And it's also important to note that when you select destination, it automatically switches to remote view. So you can zoom out without actually having to enter the map first. But of course, in this last one, it's right here. Okay, what else were we going to do? The more time passes, the harder it is to remember what I said I was going to do. Well, I believe we were having power problems. Of course, it's gone now because we caught up with all the resources we needed. But nonetheless, our factory clearly is short on power. However, upgrading our power generation is going to have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.